Saturn is the Karaka of the D10 and represents our role in the world. Saturn gets manifested by its Lord Venus and by Mercury, but then also gets here afflicted by Rahu. But overall, Saturn is here in good shape. And that means that the professional achievements indicated in the D1 will even be greater. Saturn is in the 8th house of transformation, and that indicates a shift in his career during Saturn Dasha. And this becomes a lot more certain because Saturn is conjunct Lagna Lord Venus, and so now an entire change of career direction becomes likely during Saturn Dasha. The Lagna Lord in the D10 rules a person's professional identity, and here it is in the 8th house of change and also conjunct Saturn. And so during Saturn Venus, they might go through some huge changes in their career. Now the good news is that Venus is in its own sign and strongly manifests Saturn. And so the career transformation will be beneficial and lead to greater wealth and career fulfillment. So let's start here with Saturn. We have seen, of course, in the D1 that Saturn is exalted, and right away in Saturn will manifest career success. Saturn forms here a Viparit Yoga as the 11th Lord in the 7th house. Of course, Saturn also forms those Bhava Yogas as well, and both of them involve career success, right? The 10th Lord of status and achievement, and the 11th Lord of financial gains and networks is in the 7th house of business deals and public interaction. And so this person was working in corporate management within a financial institution, and it was during Saturn that they were promoted to oversee a major investment project, a role that significantly expanded their influence and responsibilities. And by the end of Saturn, this new position led to a substantial salary increase, and it was a major step forward in their professional life. Now, when we now check the Dasamsha, we can see here that Saturn is the 8th Lord of investments and placed here in Taurus, the sign of financial management. Saturn also rules the 3rd house of teamwork and communication and the 11th house of financial gains. And so they were able to lead the project that they were assigned to competently and make good decisions. And this was their first big project that they were heading up, and it turned out to become a major breakthrough in their career. In Saturn Mercury, this person continued to work hard and long hours, as we would expect from a Saturn exalted person. However, during this time, they were only involved in some minor projects. We can see here that Mercury is not connected to Saturn in the D1 to give yoga effects. Now, if we go back to the D10, we see here quite a different picture, right? And this is also where we could have made mistakes if we only looked at the D10. Because here we can see that Saturn gets manifested here by Mercury, right? And so there should be a noteworthy career accomplishment during this time, and yet there wasn't. Saturn Mercury does not trigger any career yogas in the D1, and so the D10 just can't make a yoga better when there isn't any. So now let's see if Saturn Ketu will be any better. Let's first have a look at the D1. And here we can see that Ketu is not forming any yoga with Saturn. Ketu is in the 6th house of, hard work and due diligence. And so during this time, they really had to push themselves constantly at their job. They were sacrificing sleep and personal time to meet the demands of their job, and so they were really busy at work. Saturn Ketu in general is a period when a person gets pushed to their limits. And so this person, by this time, had spent nearly a decade working in the finance sector, and they were steadily building their reputation through hard work. And their lifestyle also had been quite frugal, which allowed them to save up a considerable amount of money. And with all that money in the bank and the relentless grind of their career starting to take a toll on their well-being, they were contemplating to transition into another career. Right? They wanted to do a job that would grant them greater control over their time and allow them to do something that's more in line with their values and sense of purpose. Right? And so it was during Saturn Ketu that they sort of had this hunch that their career in the corporate world might soon come to an end. And when we go now to the D10, we can see this more clearly, what's going on in their professional life. We can see here that Ketu is in Capricorn, the sign of corporate management. It is also conjunct the 8th house of finance and the 11th house of institutions. And so Ketu here is shedding light on what is happening right now in his, professional life. And that is, of course, that there's sort of a sense of detachment that is gradually growing, and the feeling that this corporate finance job is coming to an end. So Ketu here creates sort of a sense of karmic ending to his finance career.